Hey, what's up guys? Dimitri Fantini here. I wanted to give you a quick lesson based off of some of the other lessons on my Patreon. And we're going to take the techniques you've been learning with single strokes and we're going to apply it to the kit. Specifically, how do you take those even, well-controlled single strokes and turn it into music? How do you explore playing your snare drum and hi-hat and find ways to add dynamics to what you're doing? And also just give it more life and give it a real musical context. The first thing is that if you've got your stick control under control, then you can take your single strokes and start to make sure you can get them consistent and get consistent sounds out of your drums. So that means types of things like being able to hit the center of the drum very consistently for an even tone. And then we're going to take it from there. So what I mean by that is being able to hit single strokes in the center of the drum at a number of different dynamics. At each dynamic, you're keeping it perfectly consistent. From there, you want to be able to do the same thing, but explore the snare drum some more. So take it off of the center and start moving it down the snare drum, exploring the different tones that you can get out of it. As you explore, try to recreate what you're discovering. So if you discover that you get a certain ring out of somewhere on your drum, try to be able to hit that accurately and recreate it multiple times. Then you know when you're feeling that you want that sound, you can hit it intentionally and accurately, just whenever you want to call upon it. Okay, let's talk about how you want to apply this to the hi-hat now. I think it's really good to practice your singles on the hi-hat, especially for the idea of doing like different groove contexts. So often this is going to be playing 2 and 4 on the snare, and the rest of those 16th notes would be on the hi-hat. It's going to feel a little bit like this. Starting to incorporate that coordination between your foot and getting your singles in order is going to open up a lot of doorways for playing different grooves and being expressive with your kick phrasing. So I'm making sure that anytime I'm playing single strokes, I can hit a kick anywhere within that. And that involves things like going through the independence checklist of 16th notes and of course triplets, and making sure as you play those singles, your kick drum can just go anywhere on the E's, on the A's, 2-note groupings, 3-note groupings, all while keeping up single strokes and probably those 2 and 4s. Next, we have things like being able to control your crescendos and dynamics on the snare drum in fill contexts. And this is going to apply to a whole kit, of course, but just in terms of getting this type of thing in order, I'm going to illustrate playing with dynamics with single strokes on the snare drum, leading into grooves, switching to maybe like 4-note fills, da 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 boom, that type of thing. And here we go. Let's speed it up a little and start adding more dynamic variation to what those single strokes are doing. As you start to incorporate, let's say, micro accents into those single strokes, you start to be able to really explore subtle phrases. Instead of being really overt with what you're saying, the tiniest dynamic variation can add a lot of life to what you're playing. So that could mean something like where it starts to actually have a pulse to it, or it can mean maybe more melodic phrasing, that sort of thing, as just subtle accents, and it just takes off into just a lot of life in what you're doing. So I'll play maybe like a snare context with singles, and I'm gonna free it up a little bit and improvise with my phrasing. But it's all about like small changes in the dynamics. So I'm thinking accents as the phrase. So I kept that mostly within a 16th note framework. I threw a couple extra rolls and triplets in there, but for the most part, single strokes, and I'm starting to vary dynamics. I'm feeling those phrases. I'm singing them in my head and thinking them first, and then applying them just depending on where my hands lay. I'm also varying the textures that I'm playing with. So I'm hitting rims, I'm hitting shallow rim shots, that sort of thing. It adds so much life being able to explore it. And it really involves, once you do the work of exploration, consistent, deliberate recreation of what tones you're getting out of the drums, you can then start to free up and get those things when you feel like it. The same thing goes for the hi-hat. You get to explore all the sounds that you have here. And in a single stroke context, you get so much out of this thing, and it adds a lot of life. Even if all you're playing is if that's all you're playing, you can do so much with that. So I'm going to start with like a very straight feel, and then start to make the accents flow a little more, get some phrases into that. Here we go. Okay, I hope that gives you a little taste of what you can do just exploring single strokes on one drum and one cymbal. And then you add a kick drum to the mix and you're cooking a lot of cool stuff. It goes so much further than that as you talk about note rates, phrases, and just more musical ideas, like the melodies you're playing with, what the bass line is, starting to think of those more musical contexts. And we're not even exploring that yet. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about double strokes and incorporating that into this exact context of being able to add life and real musical phrasing to your rudiments and the way you throw this into a musical context, a groove context. So join me over on Patreon, where we're going over the core fundamentals of single and double stroke techniques, as well as tons of other stuff. And we're also going to be exploring these lessons of how to incorporate them into music and groove and life. I'll see you there.